Okay, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I should see everyone's lovely face in their camera. Creflo, where's your face? Said it was easy peasy and you're done, so I should see you. And Augustine, camera on. Okay, so today we reviewed perimeter. I'll share my screen quickly before we wrap up. We reviewed perimeter and reviewed that perimeter is the total distance around the outside of a shape, and that we can find the perimeter of rectangles and squares by using this formula. Perimeter equals 2 times length plus 2 times width. All right, and that is it for math today. And now we're going to move into close reading with Mission. Everyone mute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, please, everyone. Ms. Ruza, can you make
All right, what did you, can everyone please mute themselves?
You need to mute yourselves. All right.
Ms. Chen, I'm sorry, I'm making you co-host right now.
Well, thank you. So some great progress with dojo points. Amuela, you finally made it to 26 dojo points, so you're now eligible to redeem some more passes. Safwan, you're 1 point away from 50, so pretty exciting news. You can redeem your prize tomorrow in class. Nisaya, you're 2 points away from 25. So those are all the updates that I have. Ashada, you are 3 points away from 25, so that's pretty exciting too. All right, let's begin today's reading. Okay, today we're gonna read an article called Today's Telephone. All right, before we do that, I just wanna ask everyone, has anyone ever sent a letter to someone? Maybe your parents have sent a letter to someone. What is your experience with writing letters and sending them? Jasleen, what's your experience with that?
So I've written letters in many different ways. Like I've written one on a computer and I've written one on paper. Sometimes I sent letters to my grandparents and I send them on paper because like they're not that far, they're just like right across the street to my house. But like somebody who's like really, really far and I don't know their address, like for example, let's say a teacher or like a friend. So I would send, I would get their email and I would type a letter right there in Word.
Oh,
send it to them.
So you type out your letters, right?
Yeah, sometimes I type it out, sometimes I write it down.
Okay, depends on the person. All right, what about you, Danielle? You can unmute yourself.
I actually our great ancestors used to do this before they had phones to like write text and stuff like that. They used to write letters to each other, like telegrams, I think they called it before, so then they could communicate with each other. So they wrote like letters for it.
Oh, perfect, Danielle. You're already getting a head start on what we're going to read about today. So, Damon, do you have something quick to share with class?
Oh, well, there's two things. I think a telegram is an old-fashioned phone, and also, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the Romans, I think they had like these like bricks, and they had like this pen, and they would like crave things on the bricks, and they would send it to other people.
Perfect. Thank you, Damien, for sharing the class. All right. I noticed that you also made a prediction about what telegrams are going to be, and we'll actually read more about telegrams in this reading today. So, as we dive into the reading, keep those experiences in your mind. What it was like to write a letter, how long it may have taken to send out that letter and receive the letter. So you keep those memories in your head as you read today's lesson. Again, the expectations for today's class are always keep your camera on, eyes on the screen, and tracking the speaker, and always paying attention and participating and staying focused. All right. First, we're going to read today's title of the article, Today's Telephone. We're briefly going to skim the first paragraph here. And I'm going to give everyone about 10 seconds to think about the genre and the thinking jobs. Right. 10, 9. See that Amy's putting her hands to her head, really thinking hard. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Nasaya.
I think it's nonfiction because when I was scanning through the text before I knew it was nonfiction, it said today telephone has a long history, and then that means it's real because it's talking about how our telephones was made.
And Nasaya, can you add on and tell us what the thinking job's for nonfiction?
The thinking job is the author mostly teaching in the point of view.
Perfect. Good question, Nasaya. Can one of the children practice those things for me? Okay, thank you. All right, let's get started with the first paragraph of today's reading. Okay, again, sitting up straight, eyes on the screen, tracking me. I am scanning, scanning, scanning. Ethan, Augustine, please turn on your cameras. That's a reminder. All right, let's get started. Today's telephone has a long history as part of American technology. It is American because an American, Alexander Graham Bell, invented it. The story begins a very long time ago when there were no telephones. The only way to get a message to someone was to write it and send it. Long ago, there were messengers who traveled on foot. They were people who would run from place to place, transporting messages to other people. They would run miles, and they had great endurance. Later, communications improved in that people would send letters that traveled by wagons. In time, the mail would travel by train. Okay, let's stop there, and I'm going to ask everyone, what is the topic of this text? So what is the sort of main idea that this paragraph tells us? I'm going to look around for Dojo Point. Daniele, go ahead. What is the main idea here?
The main idea here is about that today's telephones were very different from old, like telephones, because they used to write letters and people delivered them, and those people are called messengers who travel by foot just to send like messages all around the world, I guess. And then it started like changing because at first it was by foot, and then it was by wagons, and then it was by train.
Okay, one thing I really loved about your description of the main idea is that how communications changed over time, right? First, it was transporting by foot, right? So people would walk long distances or run long distances to deliver messages, and then they had, wagons, and then later they had trains. So that's sort of the difference between how people used to deliver and send mail back in the day. Perfect. All right, let's move on to paragraph number 2. Saffron, would you like to add on?
Yeah. Also, I'm actually predicting that that when the train was invented, in 1865, the mail and other goods and sweets were the result of trains before they carried passengers and stuff.
Oh, perfect. Saffron, I'm really impressed by your knowledge of trains. Let's move on. Second paragraph. Eyes on the screen, tracking me. Scanning. You look good. All right. After the invention of a new communications tool, people could send messages quickly. That tool was the telegraph, which used a line that went from one place to another. It took years to put all the telegraph lines across America. At one point of a line was at one end of a line, a person used a device to send a message by code. At the other end, the message would be received and translated by another person. With those telegraph lines, people could send messages almost immediately, although it was not person to person. The telegraph was a remarkable invention, but it did not let people talk to each other. Okay, let's stop there, and I'm going to give scholars about 10 seconds to think about what is the main idea here. What did we just learn based on this paragraph? And I'll give everyone about 10 seconds. Aishada, go ahead and answer that question.
This paragraph is about how since they have to write letters, it was an invention made, and it was a telegraph, and people could call each other, and it was easier. But they made it, and people they people use it.
Okay, great. One thing that Aishada said was that there was a new invention called the telegraph. Can anyone add on to her idea and tell us how exactly the telegraph worked? Go ahead. Saffron, go ahead.
The telegraph works by like there was a line that was connecting from one place to another, and then the telegraph lines were taking too long to install, and then one of the end the message would would be delivered, and then on the other end there would be a person who would be translating the message with the device, and then the messages were made.
Right. And so when we're thinking about the modern day telephone, what is one thing that we have that the telegraph could not provide us? What is one thing that we can do with a cell phone that we could not do with a telegraph?
Look at each other.
Sorry, whoever unmuted themselves, please don't unmute yourself until I call on you. Let's take a look at that end of the paragraph there. What is one thing that we can do now that we couldn't do with the telegraph? Amy, go ahead.
We cannot, the telegraph cannot let people talk to each other.
Perfect. Yep. So when we're using the telegraph, people were able to send messages out, but other people had to translate it, right? But now when we talk on the cell phone, even when we text, it's sort of like more personal, right? We can talk to each other a little bit more personally. And that was not something we could do with the telegraph. All right, great. So here we have another way of communication that existed before the telephone. It was faster than letters to send in the mail, but still didn't allow people to talk directly to each other. As we continue to read, I want you to think about how our understanding of our topic is deepening. Okay, again, sitting up straight, eyes on the screen, tracking me. Okay, we look good. Amanat, I do need to see your face on the screen. All right. The telegraph meant the end of the Pony Express, which had been an American invention of another sort. The Pony Express involved riders who would carry a bag of mail from one place to another, riding quickly on horses. It was like a relay race. Those riders were replaced by telegraph operators. They had to know the code to get the messages across the wires. On one end of the telegraph, an operator clicked the message. On the other end, a machine would make the same clicks. At first, the person had to listen and note what the click said, but then they figured out how to make the machines record them. Okay, as we think about this paragraph we just read, can anybody tell me what exactly the Pony Express was? I'm gonna call on, let's see, Danielle, go ahead.
The telegram meant that the Pony Express is when people like take like bags of mail and then they ride it on ponies just to send the message. But when the telegram came, it didn't mean that they needed it anymore, since they could just give a message, kind of like a phone, because many people don't use letters anymore because we're rich.
I don't know about the rich part, but maybe just a progression of communications, right? New technology. Great. Would anyone like to add on to Danielle's point? Dojo point to Danielle. Okay, here's another question. Why do you think the telegraph machine replaced the Pony Express? Why do you think people thought telegraph machines were better or more efficient than the Pony Express? Let's see. I'm going to call on Emuela. Emuela, are you able to unmute yourself? Okay, so the reason why people thought that the telegraph machine was better was because it was a little bit faster, right? Instead of taking the mail to one person at a time, crossing many, many miles, they were able to do so with the hiring of an operator, right? So the operator received the message, and they interpreted the message. And so that's exactly what happened with the telegraph, and it made it a little bit easier to send and receive messages or letters. In the next two paragraphs, we will continue to look for structural patterns within the text that connect to the topic's sentence, which could be traced to the author's argument. Okay, before we get to this next paragraph, sitting up straight, eyes on me, tracking the screen. Right. Still, there was no telephone. Then Alexander Graham Bell invented it. He tried many ways to get a machine that would work, and he was persistent because he failed many times. After many attempts, he perfected the machine. Once he had it, everyone in the world wanted telephones. The next changes for the telephone were still the same as the telegraph. People had to put in all those lines. If you see a picture of Chicago in 1900, you would see lots of wires downtown. The first telephone lines went from one person's phone to another. Those were called landlines. Then they added what we called switching stations, so one line could reach more than one place. Still, it would take years to get the phone system to work more efficiently. All right, let's stop there. I'm going to give scholars about 10 seconds to think about this question. What did we just learn about the process of inventing telephones? Again, I'm going to give everyone about 10 seconds. You can either raise your physical hand or raise a blue Zoom hand. Emuela, I'm going to call on you again. Can you unmute yourself this time?
They all wanted the telephones because it worked fast. It worked faster and easier more than the other phone.
Right. So we knew the process for creating the telephone was kind of hard, right? Because it says here that Alexander Graham Bell failed so many times to create the telephone, but once he succeeded in doing so, everyone wanted it, right? So I'm going to ask another question. In what way was the telephone similar to the telegraph? I'm going to call on Safwan here.
So the telegram was similar to the telephone because you can send mail. You can send mail through the telegraph, and then now you can also send mail on telephones.
Right. So one thing that Safwan said is that you can still send messages through the telegraph, right? Similar to a telephone, you can still send and receive those messages. And what is that? What are those wires that you see? Over here it mentions, you see a picture of Chicago 1900. You see a lot of wires downtown. What were those wires called? Nicole and Safwan, can you add on to your thought there?
Those are called telephone line or landlines.
Landlines. So it was like the new use of landlines, right? And so we still see those landlines today, no? Do you guys know what landlines look like and what they are? Yep, I see Safwan is agreeing. Danielle is agreeing. Amy, would you like to add on? Sorry, I'm going to try and find you.
I'm thinking, I was just agreeing.
Okay, you're agreeing? Great, thank you. All right, let's move on to the end of the paragraph. Last paragraph here. Today, there are cell phones which do not need wires. They use signals that travel through the air carried by systems that depend on the science of physics. Many people now do not have a landline anymore and just depend on their cell phone. Their cell phone is changing communications and even impacting how people live. It can connect people through text as well as voice. It can download music from the internet. Some people even use their cell phone to talk to other people with video screens, kind of like what we're doing now. The telephone continues to evolve with each new technological invention. All right, I'm going to give all scholars about 10 seconds to think about this question. How do cell phones work? Kind of a broad question, and there are many different correct answers. Again, I'm going to give everyone about 10 seconds. Think about this question. How do cell phones work? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Ariana, go ahead.
Today they don't need wires because they travel through signals through the air.
Okay. Signals can travel through the air. Okay. Let me just ask everyone another question. Why do you think most people don't have landlines anymore? I remember when I was younger, I had a landline, my parents had a landline, my grandma had a landline. Why do you think landlines aren't used so much, aren't used as often anymore, or aren't used at all? Many of you might not even know what a landline is. All right, Jace, go ahead.
Landlines aren't used as often anymore because we have like phones and they're like pocketable, they're travelable, they're able to travel, and you can also bring them while they're charging instead of having it to leave it in one place.
Perfect. Yep, go ahead. Sorry.
And also we used to use landlines because the only way to connect with people was through like paper notes and like letters.
Perfect. All right. One great thing that Jay said was the how portable a cell phone was, right? I remember when we had landlines, you had to stay within the distance that where your landline was posted on the wall, right? You had to make sure that your wire on your phone stretched far enough, right? So you weren't able to like leave your house with the landline on your ear, right? You had to make sure that you were close enough to the wall or wherever your phone was hung up on. And so one great thing about cell phones now is that you can take them anywhere with you, right? You can keep them in your pocket, you can keep them in your backpack, wherever, keep them in a locker, and they're always going to be there. And you're still going to be able to text and call anyone. Another great thing is the feature of video screens, right? With landlines, you're not able to have those face-to-face conversations, but with phones, you have video screens and you can FaceTime or Zoom anyone. So great thoughts, scholars. I appreciate all your hard work and thinking. Okay, let's put together our main ideas and perhaps our author's point of view. Okay, we can get us started with some main ideas that we just discussed earlier. Give all scholars about 10 seconds to think about main ideas. Okay, Amy, what do you have in mind?
I have in mind that in the old days that we used to use landlines and we couldn't take the cell phones anywhere. We have to like stay near it. And now today you don't need landlines. You could take it everywhere. And you don't need yeah.
Okay, so one great thing that Amy said is that cell phones are essentially a lot more efficient than landlines, right? Because you can take them anywhere with you, but also the fact that the invention of the telephone will continue to evolve, right? What's another thing that we can use to add on to her comment there? Great job, Dojo point to Amy. What's another thing we can add on to our author's main idea? Safwan, do you have another main idea we can jot down here?
We can put that landlines used to be a part of of telephone history.
Landlines are a part of telephone history. Perfect. All right. Sorry. Who else has their hand raised? Jason, did you have something to add on?
And also how probably back then the phones could have been more bigger than the phones that we usually have right now, because probably since it's like a bit old, people, they probably needed a lot of stuff to make the phone, so that's why it's bigger than through the evolve. And through when it starts to evolve, it starts to get smaller because people start to get more used to it and use different stuff.
Cell phones continue to get smaller, more portable, right? All right. Oops. All right. Let's see. Who else has their hand raised? Daniele, would you like to?
This is just like a statement for right now. If we still had telegrams, we would not be able, like in this time, it would be really, really tough to communicate since we can't go out. And since we have to do school on like in video form, so we have to see each other, that would be very, very difficult while using a telegram, including since some people like live far away, like countries away. So how would they be able to communicate?
Okay, amazing thought there, Daniele. Dojo point to you. One thing that she said is that if the COVID-19 pandemic happened way back when, schools would just not be open, right? Because there would be no way to teach remotely because we wouldn't have access to Zoom or to laptops or to cell phones, right? Or iPads or whatever device you use to go on Zoom. So that would be rendered ineffective. But now that we have these great devices, we're able to use these platforms to continue our education. So I'm going to type out author's point of view, and I'm going to have a scholar read this out loud. And I just want everyone to say if they agree or disagree with the point of view that I've just typed out. Okay. Amy, would you like to go ahead and read that out for us?
Telephones are made communications between individuals faster and easier. Communications has evolved. Telephones are evolving every day.
Thank you so much, Amy. Dojo point to Amy for actively participating throughout this entire lesson. All right. Does everyone agree or disagree with the author's point of view that I've just written down here? If so, what would you add on or what would you take out? So go into your chat feature, privately chat me whether or not you agree or disagree. If you disagree, write down exactly what should be included in the author's point of view or what should be taken away. First 3 scholars to do so will receive Dojo points. Dojo point goes to Jace. Dojo point goes to Amy. Dojo point goes to Safwan. All right. Right, so it looks like we have our author's main point and point of view down, locked, and loaded. All right, so I'm gonna, Today's day 1 prompt for today's reading is, what do the telephone and the telegraph have in common? Cite at least 2 pieces of evidence to support your answer. This means we're logging back into formative. We have about 10 minutes to complete today's formative. Yes, I'm going to share the link with everyone. And I'm also going to share my screen so that everyone knows what the formative today looks like. Okay, it's titled 7.14 Close Reading IP. So over here, we already have the article posted right into formative. So if you want to go back in and refer to any of the paragraphs here, feel free to do so. This is a great resource, and you can just easily go back into formative. And this is a great way to pull evidence directly from the article. So again, you need 2 pieces of evidence from the text to help support your answer. So I am always going to be checking for 2 pieces of evidence. All right, now I'm going to log in formative myself and see which scholars have started working. Wow, okay, I'm impressed. Dojo point goes to Nasaya for working urgently. Dojo point to Aishada and Amy and Ariana, already getting started with today's IP. I just want to put out a quick reminder for all scholars, be careful about your spelling. So always make sure that you're going back into your short answer, reading it over, and checking spelling. I'm really loving how detailed Ariana and Nasaya's short answers are. Quick reminder, we have about 8 minutes to complete this short response. I still see that a couple of scholars have not started. Aminat, you're off to a great start there. Saffron, you as well. Daniele, I'm not really sure what you're doing in your short response there. I see random letters being typed into your short response. Okay, what I've just put into the group chat is a list of today's math homework questions. I just want to make sure that everyone has these written down in your packet or on a post-it or a blank sheet of paper, so you know exactly which questions you need to do for today. So quickly jot those down. We have 5 minutes left of class. If you have those jotted down, make sure to go back into your short response and complete and submit your work.
Miss Chan, I submitted it.
Aishada, okay, let me just go back up and read yours. Okay, Dojo point to Aishada. Great work. I love that you made it very clear. You used 2 pieces of evidence and you described how and why communications evolved throughout time.